Pre par nedelja bili smo svedoci Felix Baumgartnerovog skoka sa vrha svemira, premda se niko zaista nije zapitao šta je taj entuzijasta radio skroz gore i čemu tolike pare. I ni ja do skora, do juče nisam znao o čemu se zaista radi, dok nisam upoznao Marshu Ivins. Njemu se ona toliko dopala da je morao to da joj saopšti u 4 oka i on je požurio u njen ofis gore, budući da je Marsha Ivins astronautkinja sa čak 1318 sati provedenih u svemiru. Dakle, jedna od retkih žena na planeti Zemlji koja kada ima problem zove Houston, jedna od retkih žena koja je i u jednom danu uviđala i 16 zalazaka sunca, a pogotovo osoba koja je više pešačila po svemiru nego ja po Knez Mihajlovoj. Astronautkinja Marsha Ivins u svemirskoj misiji na Festivalu Nauke pod naslovom Moguće je. Vežite se, polećemo.
Turn those lights down. Thank you all for coming. I am going to speak in English, so hopefully you understand me. I will speak very slowly. I am going to tell you the story of the history of human spaceflight. This picture that you see here of the Earth is a real picture. It was taken by a crew on an Apollo mission at the moon. So that's what the Earth looks like if you get all the way to the moon. Human spaceflight started in 1961 with a race between the United States and the Soviet Union to see who could get to the moon first. The Soviet Union had flown the first satellite. They had flown the first man in space. In the United States, these were the first 7 astronauts. The first capsule that they flew was a Mercury capsule, and you can see how small it is compared to the people. The first American astronaut to go into space and circle the Earth was John Glenn. So here is John Glenn getting into his capsule, and here is his rocket. This is the picture of John Glenn from space. When they land, he lands in the water, and then the helicopter will pull him up and bring him back to land. We had 7 Mercury flights, and then we flew the Gemini program. Gemini taught us to do a couple of things. It taught us how to connect 2 spacecraft together while they are traveling at 28,000 kilometers per hour. It taught us how to do a spacewalk. Inside a space capsule, there is no gravity, but there is air and there is pressure. So you can talk and breathe just like you do here in this room. But outside of the space capsule, there is no air and there is no pressure. So all of his air and pressure comes through this line, which is connected to the spacecraft. There were 2 crew members in the Gemini capsule, and that's all the room that there was inside. The longest Gemini flight was 14 days. So think about sitting next to somebody in space for 14 days. In 1969, in the Apollo program, we went to the moon. There were 3 crew members in the Apollo capsule. 1 stayed inside the capsule as it circled the moon. The other 2 went to the surface of the moon in this lander. These are all real pictures. All the pictures I show you are real. Here is the astronaut, and here is the lander. This is the portion that has the air and the pressure, so the 2 astronauts stood in that portion. They did not have a chair. They stood to land, and this is the only portion that will leave the moon. We had 6 missions to the moon, so we had 12 American astronauts who walked on the moon. We had a little rover, a little car, that could drive around the moon, but you could only drive as far as you could walk back if something broke, and he only had 4 hours of oxygen in his backpack. Here is the top portion that I showed you, leaving the surface of the moon, and in the background you can see the Earth. On the Earth, when you look at the moon, you can see a full moon or a half moon or a quarter moon. When you are at the moon and you look back at the Earth, you can see a full Earth or a half Earth or a quarter Earth. The Apollo capsule landed under parachutes in the water, and then the crew was picked up by the helicopter. You can see how burned the capsule is from having come through the atmosphere. 1972 was the last time anybody has gone to the moon, so I have not gone to the moon. 1972 was the last time there has been a human footprint on the moon, and the last time any human has watched the Earth rise or set. Russia did not make it to the moon, but they have been flying in space since 1960, and the rocket they fly today is this one called Soyuz. Their capsule, which they fly today, the crew is in this portion of the capsule. Their cargo is here, the solar array for electrical power, and that is the engine. And this is the only portion that comes back to Earth. Inside, here's the way the crew looks, and there is not very much room in this Soyuz capsule, like the Apollo. When they land on land under a parachute, under one parachute. And then in order to get the crew out, they put this structure around it, and they pull the crew out. You can see how burned the capsule is from having come through the atmosphere. Here is one of the astronauts who is signing the outside of his capsule. We had a Soyuz land with an American astronaut just a couple weeks ago in Russia, and it's very cold there. So here's the crew when they have taken them out of the capsule. In 2003, the Chinese developed the ability to take people to space. Their rocket looks very much like the Russian rocket, and their capsule looks very much like the Russian capsule. In 2008, they did their first spacewalk. In 2010, they sent their first satellite to the moon. And earlier this year, they flew their first woman with 2 other crew members to their first space station. So here is the Chinese crew as they are in orbit in the space station. They also land on land under a parachute like the Russian system. Here is the woman as she gets out, and here is the crew that sits by their capsule at the end of the mission. All of the capsules that I have shown you so far were designed to be used only one time. They are so badly burned coming through the atmosphere that they are not used again. In 1981, we started to fly the space shuttle, and it was designed to be used many times. It launched like a rocket, it flew like all the other capsules in space, and it landed on a runway at the end of the mission like a glider, so no engines. But the material that covers it was designed to not burn, but protect the shuttle as it comes through the atmosphere so that it could be used many times. Starting in the year 2000, we began to construct a space station. And today, this is what the space station looks like. Since the end of the year 2000, there has always been somebody on board the space station. All these spacecraft look a little bit different. They all have one thing in common. So this is what happens when there is no gravity. That's me. Without any gravity, there is no up. So each one of these crew members thinks they are pointed up. Without gravity, there is no weight. So you can hold up a very heavy object with a single finger. And without gravity, you cannot walk, you must fly. Now you notice you never see the picture of somebody stopping because the way you stop is to run into something. So now we know why Superman always flies with his arms out in front of him. Now, just by moving your body, you can do some very interesting maneuvers while you float. Imagine that you are floating and you get hit with a heavy object. And you do not have to be moving in order to just move your body and turn completely around. So this is me. Here he is demonstrating what happens when an ice skater moves their arms in and out. He moves at that speed. When he moves his arms out, he stops. When his arms come back in again, he moves faster. And he can spin all day and never get dizzy. Here's another demonstration of just moving your body. Please do not try this at home. Now, he's not as good at this. It takes a little bit more hip action to do that. If you have seen the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, here is that scene. Here is one crew member using another crew member as a surfboard. You've seen crews floating all over the place. What if you have to stay in one position? Every time you touch something, you float away from it. So here, she has her toes in a strap so that she can stay in one place to do work, and those straps are all over the space station, so every time you need to work or do an experiment, you can stay in one place. Here she has her toes grabbing onto the bar as she stretches across the aisle to work. Please do not try this one at home. This is a ball of water, and without any gravity, surface tension is the strongest force. There is an experiment across the street upstairs that shows surface tension on liquids. This is a ball of orange juice. Here a crew member is drinking that ball of liquid. The normal way you drink, though, is from a bag. Water is put into the bag, and there is a powder in the bag. This says orange juice, so there will be orange juice powder inside. When you add water, it makes the drink, and there is a water dispenser in the wall. Sometimes the crew likes to drink directly from the water dispenser. This is a tea bag in a bag, sealed. You add hot water, and you have tea. There is no oven and there is no refrigerator. So the food has been cooked, but the air has been taken out, the liquid is taken out. So to make it something you can eat again, you put this in the water dispenser and you add the water. There's a little pieces of Velcro there. Then you put it in a device that warms it up. Other food comes in packages with the liquid that is sealed, so it does not have to be in a refrigerator. And then everything else is sealed into bags. The Russians provide their food in a can. You want the food to not be loose and crumbly. Think about dry cereal. If you were eating it, it would float around. So you want food that makes no crumbs. Here is the perfect space food, peanut butter and honey. This is peanut butter and honey on a piece of bread. This is creamed spinach. Doesn't that look horrible? This is a space hamburger. So the crew has taken a tortilla and it is clipped off with Velcro to the wall. Then there is mustard and ketchup and 2 pieces of meat that have already been cooked, warmed up and stuck onto the tortilla. And the surface tension with the mustard and the ketchup holds the meat in place. On board the shuttle, the crew member has his feet in the straps, a tray tied around his leg. The food packages are Velcroed to the tray, and his drink bag sits right in front of him, so when he's ready, he can just put his mouth on the straw. On board the space station, there is a table. The table has a bar underneath where you can hook your toes, and the straps on the table will hold the food packages down. Here in the back, you see these little plastic bottles that has liquid salt, liquid pepper, liquid spices. Those cans of food that the Russians provide, those are warmed up in the table. This is the trash bag. Sometimes the crew likes to use chopsticks because you can reach into the packages without getting your hand dirty, and without gravity, you can hold a very large object with your chopsticks. Here he is drinking a ball of coffee with chopsticks, just because he can. There is no alcohol in space, even though we fly with the Russians. So here's a crew having a toast with their drink bags. On the Earth, if you want a piece of fruit or a vegetable, something fresh, it's easy to get. It's available to you any day. But on board the space station, when they only have a cargo vehicle that visits 4 times a year, fresh fruit and fresh vegetables is a luxury. So when we send cargo to the space station, we always send fresh fruit and vegetables. Here's how you eat your M&Ms in space. Here's the creamed spinach. There is a shrimp on a fork. Here are the M&Ms. And here's throwing M&Ms into a ball of water. Here she is letting go pistachio nuts. So the men, of course, open their mouths and go right for it. She is much more ladylike as she eats her nuts. Here she is making that ball of orange juice. So she squeezes the bag, the ball of orange juice comes out of the straw, then she will pull down on the bag, releasing the surface tension. And the surface tension in the ball is so strong, he can move it around with a piece of dental floss. This is the NASA high-tech trash compactor. What do you do with your trash in space? We do not throw our trash into space. We compress it into a bag, and on the shuttle, we brought it home. On the space station, it waits for a cargo vehicle to come. The good cargo is taken out, filled up with trash, and then separated from the station to burn up. So the trash stays with you for many months. Here is the toolbox. Imagine tools floating around. How would you put them in a box or a drawer? This has a piece of foam with a cutout for each tool, shaped like each tool, and you simply press your tool into the piece of foam. Here is how you exercise. Exercise is very important without gravity. Your body here on the Earth exercises every time you stand up, every time you walk, because you are moving against gravity. When there is no gravity, your muscles and your heart could get weak. When you come back to Earth then, you would be hurt. So we exercise 2 hours every day on the space station. He wears a harness that pulls him down to this platform. This is like a bicycle. So the shoes are connected to the pedal, and then he can pedal against that resistance. Or the harness can be used to attach you to a treadmill, which is bolted to the floor. The treadmill moves, and you get to run on the treadmill. And now we can do resistive exercise, like lifting weights. As he pulls up on the bar pulls him back so that he does not float away, and the exercises you can do are the same as you would do in a gym. The crew does not work all day long. They can bring their own music, their own iPods, bring their own books to read. He's reading Harry Potter. We have some instruments on board. There is a keyboard that is powered by a battery, and it's strapped around the table so it does not float away as you play it. There's a guitar, and she has brought her flute. We have laptop computers on board, and from them we can get email from home. We can get news. They can send us movies. They can send us sporting events. We can do video conferences like Skype with our friends and family, and we can use it like a telephone to call anywhere in the world. How do you take a bath when there is no gravity? There is no bathtub, there is no shower. Water, remember, forms a ball, so you put the ball on you. You squeeze on a ball of water, spread it around your body, take a washcloth with soap, soap your body, squeeze on another ball of water to rinse it off, and you get one bath towel about that big for a week, and that's how you dry yourself. Shaving is normal. We have a battery-powered razor or a straight razor. When the men started spending a long time in space, 2 weeks or more, they wanted a haircut. How do you cut hair when hair would float? So this device cuts hair and then sucks it into a vacuum cleaner hose. The girls do not want to cut their hair. Toothpaste. You have toothpaste and a toothbrush. You brush your teeth normally, but there is no place to spit. So they recommend that you swallow the toothpaste. Here is how you sleep when you are floating free. On the space shuttle, everybody had a sleeping bag, and you would tie it off to the ceiling, the wall, the floor, where you like to sleep. You get in, and you zip it up with a zipper, and these straps are Velcro, and you tighten them around you so it gives you the feeling that you are lying in a bed. You put your head on the pillow, which is a piece of foam, and then you strap your head to it. And whatever you do not put in will float, so your arm will float. But because there is no gravity, your hand doesn't fall asleep. On board the space station, everybody has their own compartment to sleep in. So she has her sleeping bag inside, and she's put her arms in it, and all of her personal items are in there with her. Here is the toilet. This is a Russian system. Here's the way it works. You take this hose down from the wall, and you hold it in the right position for liquid. So that you do not float away, you slide your toes under the straps, and when you start liquid out of your body and you turn it on, it sucks the liquid like a little vacuum cleaner hose into a tank. After all the liquid has been collected, it is then reprocessed back into drinking water. Or, as the crew says, making tomorrow's coffee out of today's coffee. How do you get water on your space station? We don't have enough ability to bring a lot of water for the people that are on space station. There are 6 people on there most of the time. So we recycle the water into drinking water. We recycle wastewater also into oxygen. We break it down into oxygen and hydrogen, water, H2O. There's an experiment across the street for water, I'm sure. And then we breathe the oxygen and throw the hydrogen away. So we are recycling our wastewater. We are not recycling our solid material, fortunately, but to collect that, you lift the seat, put a bag in the can, then you put your solid material into the bag, and there are tissues and wipes so that you can clean yourself. Close the lid, put in a new bag for the next person, and when the can is full, we put a lid on the can, and then put in a new can and wait for a cargo vehicle. So these cans could sit around for 4 months. No one has ever complained about this system. Taking pictures of the Earth is a very important part of our job. People think that when we go to space, we see the whole Earth, like the first picture I showed you, and we do not. We are not very far above the surface of the Earth. We are at 400 kilometers. An airliner flies at 10 kilometers. The moon is at 400,000 kilometers. So we are not very far off the surface of the Earth, and this is as much Earth as we see from the window at one time. Parts of the Earth look very unusual. This is a glacier in the Andes, sand dunes in Algiers, a dry riverbed in the United States, lava domes in Saudi Arabia, a frozen river in China, the waters of the Caribbean, and the Namibian desert on the west coast of Africa. You could look at these pictures almost and convince yourself that the Earth was uninhabited until you see it at night. Some parts of the Earth are recognizable. This is the Sinai Peninsula. This is Florida in the United States. And here is Italy, looking from the south to the north. Here is Italy at night. When I show you these night pictures, you will see this little line across the top. That is the top of the atmosphere. And all the air that we breathe is below that line. And we are only flying about that far above the Earth, so not very far. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, here is Belgrade, right here, and Pančevo up there. Here's the Danube. Here's a closer picture of Belgrade. And even closer, here is the runway from the airport. Here is Borcha across the river. And notice that your agriculture, when you grow crops here, is all in straight lines. So hold that thought. Here is Belgrade at night. In the snow, in the winter. We'll now go around the world. This is New York. Here is Central Park in New York, and here's a close-up of Central Park. All these pictures were taken from crew on board the space station or the space shuttle. Here is New York at night. Washington, D.C., San Francisco, London at night during the Olympics, and here the white lights are where the Olympics were taking place. Paris, Prague, Moscow, Istanbul at night, Seoul, Korea at night, Kuwait City at night, Venice, Tokyo at night. These are fishing boats in the South China Sea. Greece, the Hawaiian Islands, looking right down into Mauna Loa on Hawaii, a volcano. The Great Barrier Reef, the Mississippi River, the Amazon River, the Ganges River, and the Nile River, and the Nile at night. It takes 90 minutes to go around the Earth one time, and every astronaut from every country who has ever flown has come back and said the same thing. As you go around the Earth every 90 minutes, you do not see the lines and the borders that separate the countries. We learn lines and borders when we learn geography, but there are no natural lines and borders. Sadly, there are man-made borders, which you cannot see in this picture, but is the line that separates Pakistan and India is a lighted border, man-made. Here are shadows from the pyramids. I showed you the agricultural lines here in Serbia. In Brazil, agriculture is done in circles. So they are irrigated in a swinging circle, and so they are all round. This is the Grand Canyon, the Himalayas, Mount Everest, Mount Etna, Mount Vesuvius, and Mount Fuji. A thunderstorm, a hurricane. About a year and a half ago, there was a comet that made a close approach to the Earth. And this picture was taken by a crew member on the space station of the comet as it went by. This is the Earth. Here is the top of the atmosphere as the sun comes up, and all the points of light are stars. Because we go around the Earth every 90 minutes, 16 times a day, the sun rises and the sun sets. And here are the northern lights, the aurora, or the southern lights. The space shuttle flew for 30 years. It flew 135 missions, and then we retired it at the end of last year. On board the space shuttle, it looked like an airplane cockpit on the inside because we landed it like an airplane. The crew was in this portion here where the air and the pressure was, but the entire back cargo area was used to carry experiments and satellites. Things like the Hubble telescope were carried to orbit in the back of the shuttle. And for the last 10 years and 37 flights, we carried parts of the space station one piece at a time. So the piece would be in the back of the space station, the back of the space shuttle, and then the shuttle will attach to the space stations. This is a real picture of the space shuttle attached to the space station. The crew got into one of the Russian vehicles, backed away, took the picture, and then came back and reattached. So here's where we attach. When the space shuttle would connect to the space station, the commanders of those two vehicles would have a welcome ceremony. And in this case, she was the commander of the space station. She was the commander of the space shuttle. So the two most important jobs you could have in space were held by a woman. Then the crew uses a combination of the mechanical arm on the shuttle and the station to lift that part out of the cargo bay and then put it on the space station where it belongs. Then two crew members would get in their spacesuits and go out into space to finish the assembly job. Today's spacesuit does not need to stay connected to the spacecraft. All of his air is contained in his backpack, and he has 8 hours of air, much more than they had on the moon. He does have a safety line that he uses to attach to some part of the structure so that he does not get floating away. We knew that crew members would be maneuvering on the outside of this spacecraft, so we put these handrails in all of the modules so that no matter where the crew needs to go, he can go hand over hand, regardless of how large the spacecraft got. When the mechanical arm is not carrying a big part of the space station, it could carry a crew member on a platform so that he could go to where he needed to work with things in two hands and not have to hold on with one hand or worry about floating away. If he did come out of the platform, or if his safety line does break, in his backpack he has a little jet system, so he could fly his way back and hold on, or rescue his partner if needed. At the end of the mission, the cargo bay of the shuttle was empty, and the shuttle would return home. Here is a picture of the shuttle as it comes through the atmosphere, as seen by the crew on the space station. The shuttle then would land on a runway with no engines. So we have now stopped flying the shuttle. As the space station was connected, one part at a time, you can see as we've added parts, it gets larger and larger. We add solar arrays and laboratory modules. Well, you have seen all the good pictures anyway. So I will just terminate by saying that the space station we hope to fly till the year 2020. What we do in the future, I'm not sure what we do in space. We used to have a plan in the United States, and now we no longer do have a plan. And we send our American astronauts to space on a Russian capsule. I will tell you where I think we should go in the future. I think we should go back to the moon. It takes 3 days to get to the moon and 3 days to come back. So if something went wrong, you could bring your crew home. But if we learned to go to the moon, if we learned to provide for ourselves how to make water and how to grow food and how to repair our hardware, we could go someplace truly interesting like Mars. Mars, it takes 6 months to get to Mars. And it takes 18 months before it only takes 6 months to come home. So a Mars mission is 3 years long. You cannot turn around halfway to Mars and come back. But if we could learn to take care of ourselves on the moon, then we could go to Mars. Today's rocket technology is the same technology we have been using for 50 years. We have not improved at all on our rocket technology. So Mars is about as far as we could possibly get with today's rockets. In 1967, we launched a Voyager probe, planning to send it to the end of our solar system. It got there this year, 18 billion miles. Or kilometers, excuse me, 18 billion kilometers. It took 37 years to get to the end of our solar system. So until one of you invents a new kind of rocket propulsion, Mars is about as far as we can get. But if we could do that and go beyond that and see the other planets of our solar system and see other solar systems, other galaxies, then we could really be a planet that explores, a planet that realizes our destiny, I believe, to explore and to discover. Because when we discover and we explore and we do things that are hard, like go to Mars, we bring good things back to our planet Earth. So I hope you embrace the things that you learn in your science festival today and this weekend, and that one of you does get inspired to generate the next technology that will take us out into the stars. Thank you.